Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe and support me. The sun hung high over the endless sea of sand, its scorching rays making the air shimmer as though the earth itself was ablaze. This was the no man's land, a place where even the most advanced machines struggled to operate and where the bravest of explorers rarely returned. Legend had it that nothing could survive in this desolate desert, yet here they were, trudging through the dunes, the Avengers, an elite group bound by a mission that could very well determine the fate of the entire universe. Alexis, their leader, squinted against the sunlight, the wind kicking up sand that stung her face. Her helmet visor offered some protection, but she preferred to keep it up, feeling more in tune with her surroundings. "We should be getting close," she said, glancing at the navigation display on her wrist. To her left, Ryder, the combat specialist, adjusted his rifle. He was always ready for a fight, his fingers twitching as if sensing danger in the distance. "I don't like it here," he muttered. "Too quiet. And when it's quiet, it's never good." "They say the quiet is where the secrets live," Kayla, the strategist, chimed in. She was the brains behind this mission, the one who'd pieced together the clues leading them to this forgotten land. She pulled a tattered map from her bag, tracing a line with her finger. "According to this, we're almost at the city." The team pressed forward, their steps heavy in the thick sand. For days, they had been following a series of cryptic signals, energy surges unlike anything they'd encountered before. What lay ahead was something more powerful than the cosmic stones they had fought over in the past. Something ancient. Something dangerous. Hours passed, and just as the sun began to sink toward the horizon, they saw Ida, an outline of towering spires breaking through the haze of sandstorms. "The forgotten city." "There it is," Alexis whispered, all creeping into her voice. She'd studied the myths, the stories of this place. An ancient civilization, long dead, whose technology surpassed anything the galaxy had ever seen. But the reason for their disappearance was as mysterious as the city itself. "Let's hope what's inside is worth the trip," Ryder said, his voice low. His eyes scanned the ruins, his grip tightening on his rifle as they approached. The city was massive, its buildings tall and imposing even in their ruin. Sand had swallowed most of it, but enough remained for them to see the intricate designs carved into the stony symbols and hieroglyphs from a language none of them recognized. They made their way through the city's outer gates, stepping into what once might have been a bustling metropolis. Now, it was eerily silent. Alexis led the way, her senses on high alert. Something about this place felt alive, as if the city itself was watching them. Kayla knelt beside a crumbled statue, running her hand over the worn stone. "This place, it's older than we thought. Pre-human, maybe even pre-alien. Whoever built this had knowledge far beyond our own." Ryder snorted. "Then why are they all dead?" "Maybe they found something they shouldn't have," Kayla replied, standing. "Something too powerful to control." They ventured deeper into the city, the air growing colder, heavier, with every step. It wasn't just the temperature. There was a weight, a presence that seemed to press down on them, making their hearts race and their breaths shallow. Alexis stopped suddenly, holding up her hand. "We're not alone." From the shadows, a figure emerged. Tall, cloaked in dark armor, his face hidden beneath the helmet. The power radiating off him was palpable, like a living thing, coiling around them, squeezing the air from their lungs. "Who are you?" Alexis demanded, stepping forward, her hand hovering near her weapon. The figure's voice was low, a growl that echoed through the empty streets. "I am the one who controls this city, and soon, I will control the universe." It was Hema, the warlord, the one they had feared would be here. His reputation had reached across galaxies, a tyrant who left nothing but destruction in his wake. And now, he stood before them, his hand resting on the very power they had come to stop. Ryder raised his rifle, but before he could fire, the warlord lifted his arm, and with a flick of his wrist, sent Ryder crashing into a wall with a force that shattered stone. "You are too late," the warlord said, his voice filled with dark amusement. "This city's power belongs to me now, and with it, I will reshape the universe in my image." Alexis stood her ground, her heart pounding in her chest. "We won't let that happen," the warlord laughed. "You think you can stop me? You, who know nothing of the power that lies beneath this city. You are children, playing with forces you cannot comprehend." He raised his hand, and the ground beneath them began to tremble. A low rumble echoed through the city as the power surged from the depths, rising to the surface like a beast awakening from a long slumber. "Go," Alexis ordered, her voice calm but urgent. "Find the core. We need to shut it down before he can use it." Kayla nodded, already pulling out her datapad, scanning for any sign of the energy source. Ryder, groaning as he pushed himself to his feet, gave the warlord one last glare before following Kayla. Alexis stayed behind, keeping her eyes locked on the warlord. "We've fought monsters before. We'll fight them again. But you're just a man, hiding behind a power you don't understand." The warlord's smile was hidden beneath his helmet, but she could feel it in his voice. "Then you will die like all the others who have stood in my way." The ground continued to shake as the warlord turned, disappearing into the shadows. Alexis didn't hesitate. She ran after Kayla and Ryder, her mind racing. They had to find the source of this power and stop it, but they were running out of time. They reached the center of the city, where a massive chamber lay buried beneath the ruins. Inside, the core pulsed with a dark, ominous energy. It was unlike anything they had ever seen, a swirling mass of light and shadow, alive with raw power. Kayla's fingers flew across her datapad. "This is it. The power source. If we can overload data." "How long?" Alexis asked, her eyes scanning the chamber. "Not long," Kayla replied. "But it's risky. If we overload it too much, the entire city could go up in flames." Ryder grinned. "Sounds like my kind of plan." Suddenly, the warlord's voice echoed through the chamber. "You will not touch it." He appeared at the entrance, his hand raised, the power of the city coursing through him. He was stronger now, more dangerous. He could control the very fabric of reality around them, bending it to his will. Alexis drew her weapon. "Kayla, do it." "Now." The warlord's eyes flashed with anger as he lunged toward them, but Alexis was ready. She met him head on, their weapons clashing with a force that sent shock waves through the chamber. Ryder fired his rifle, but the warlord deflected the shots with a flick of his wrist. "I told you," the warlord growled. "You cannot win." Alexis felt the sheer force of the warlord's power bearing down on her. Every blow he landed seemed to grow stronger, faster, as if the entire city was fueling him. But she wouldn't back down. Not now. Not when they were this close. She parried another strike, her muscles straining against the impact, and fired her blaster point blank into his chest. The blast hit him dead center, but instead of falling, he absorbed the energy, using it to drive her back. "You're only making me stronger," the warlord snarled, stepping closer, his dark aura expanding like a cloud, choking the life from the chamber. Behind her, Kayla's fingers danced across the datapad, her face etched with concentration. "Almost 3 broken bar, just keep him busy," she shouted. Alexis grit her teeth. They needed more time. Ryder, still firing round after round from his rifle, switched tactics, grabbing a grenade from his belt and launching it toward the warlord's feet. The explosion rocked the chamber, sending debris flying, but the warlord emerged unscathed, his eyes glowing with unnatural energy. "I am the master of this city now," he bellowed, lifting his hand. The very ground beneath them began to crack, deep fissures forming as the power of the core twisted the stone. The ancient walls groaned under the pressure, and for a moment, Alexis feared the entire place would collapse before they had a chance to stop him. She charged at him again, but this time he was ready. With a flick of his wrist, he sent her crashing into a pillar, knocking the wind from her lungs. Pain shot through her ribs, but she forced herself to stand, ignoring the throbbing in her chest. "Is that all you've got?" she taunted, her voice rough. She needed to keep him focused on her, To buy Kayla just a few more precious seconds. The warlord's eyes narrowed. You are insignificant, a speck of dust, and soon, you will be nothing. He moved toward her with terrifying speed, his fist crashing down toward her skull. She barely dodged in time, the force of his blow shattering the stone where she had just stood. But he was relentless, following up with another strike that grazed her arm, tearing through her suit. Got it! Kayla suddenly shouted, her voice filled with triumph. Alexis didn't need to hear any more. She threw herself to the ground just as Kayla hit the final sequence on her datapad. The core in the center of the room pulsed violently, the dark energy swirling faster, out of control. The entire chamber trembled as the overload began. The warlord froze, sensing the change. His eyes darted to the core, realization dawning on his face. What have you done? He roared, his voice filled with fury. Stopped you, Kayla replied, standing tall, her datapad still in hand. This city's power is too much for anyone to control, and now you're going to pay the price for your arrogance. The warlord's expression twisted with rage. He lunged toward the core, his hands outstretched as if he could somehow regain control of the energy now spiraling beyond his grasp. But it was too late. The core was collapsing in on itself, the overload reaching a critical point. No! He screamed, the dark energy turning on him, wrapping around him like a living thing. He fought against it, but his own power had grown too great, too unstable. The energy consumed him, pulling him into the core's chaotic vortex. Alexis and the others didn't wait to see the final moments. Move! She shouted, grabbing Kayla and Ryder and dragging them toward the exit. The ground was shaking violently now, chunks of stone falling from the ceiling as the entire city began to cave in. They sprinted through the crumbling ruins, dodging debris and leaping over widening cracks in the earth. The ancient city was collapsing around them, the weight of millennia crashing down in an instant. But they couldn't stop. If they didn't make it out in time, they'd be buried along with the warlord and his ambitions. The sky outside was a brilliant, swirling red as they burst through the city's gates, sand whipping around them in violent gusts. Behind them, the ancient city imploded, sinking into the desert with a deafening roar. The core's final surge of power sent a shockwave across the landscape, flattening the nearby dunes and leaving a massive crater where the city had once stood. For a long moment, none of them spoke, their breaths coming in ragged gasps as they stared at the destruction. The warlord was gone. The city, its secrets, its power, all of it had been lost to the desert once again. Ryder was the first to break the silence, wiping the sweat and sand from his face. That a broken bar was a hell of a thing. Alexis nodded, her eyes still fixed on the smoking ruins. We did it. Kayla slumped to the ground, her hands trembling slightly as the adrenaline began to fade. But at what cost? She whispered. We barely made it out, and the power of that such a broken bar, it's gone. Maybe forever. Maybe that's for the best, Alexis said softly. Some things aren't meant to be controlled. Ryder let out a dry chuckle, though there was no humor in it. Yeah, well, tell that to the next maniac who goes digging around out here. The sun was setting now, casting long shadows across the desert. The sky above them was a deep, blood red, the aftermath of the core's final pulse still rippling through the atmosphere. They had won, but it didn't feel like a victory. Not entirely. As they gathered their gear and began the long trek back to their ship, Alexis couldn't help but glance over her shoulder one last time. The no man's land stretched out behind them, silent once more, its secrets buried beneath the sand. She knew this wasn't the end. There would always be more threats, more battles. But for now, they had stopped the warlord's plans, and they had survived. In the fading light of the desert, Alexis allowed herself a brief moment of peace. Whatever came next, they would face it together, because that's what they did. They fought, and they survived. The universe was vast, full of dangers and mysteries. But as long as they had each other, they would keep fighting. For now, though, they could rest. And as the last rays of sunlight disappeared beneath the horizon, the team walked forward, leaving the ruins of an ancient world behind, knowing that they had done what needed to be done.